Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a video and podcast show that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Today, I have a very accomplished professional and entrepreneur with me, Shreyasi Singh. Shreyasi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Shreyasi is from LSR and the Indian Institute of Mass Communication. She was the editor of Inc. India when I was fortunate enough to be covered in her magazine. And now she is the founder and CEO of Harappa Education. So Shreyasi, tell me a little bit about your early work and some of your early challenges.
It's so wonderful, first of all, to be on your show because you were my first cover story as
Okay.
editor. And I remember coming to your place and we did all of that recording. So, it's just, and it's been several years since that. But of course, it was my first edition as editor. So I can never forget the edition in which you were on the cover. Early journey in terms of early professional journey, of course, I started as actually in television journalism. I used to work with Asian News International, which was sort of news agency partners on television for Reuters. And really, even now, most news channels really run on ANI footage. And certainly most reportage on India on TV across the world is really fed by ANI. So it was like this crazy network of so many swingers reporters from across the country sending. And I did lots of exciting roles there. I worked on the feed. It was called the Subcon feed, which is really the subcontinental feed that was going to Reuters, and then of course from Reuters to broadcast stations across the world. So very fast, like really sharp news judgment to see, what would work. Very quick editing, keep it really like no frills. Did some programming there, and then actually was part of the input desk. And the input desk is sort of like this, the nerve center of a news organization where all of the reporters, fingers, bureaus are, pitching stories to you and say, okay, which one should I prioritize? Because on any given day, there are 10 things, there are 3 reporters, 10 things, who does what. So I think very exciting to sort of, have sharpened a news sense and I think quick decision making. Actually, I think I think I learned a lot in my journalism career, which I now use. Then, of course, moved on to sort of helping, was part of the team that launched the English language channel of the India Today group, which was earlier called Headlines Today.
Yeah.
And now, obviously, it's India Today TV. And this was still sort of, mid 2000s, 2004, 5. I think 2 or 3, 4. Television was still exciting, very different from how we think of television news now. So I think the generation of TV journalists above me certainly have a lot of destruction of that. So I did that, then worked on a talk show for BBC, and then had a child, and really I realized that I had got into journalism really because I loved writing, and that was really the core skill that I felt. And you're a soundbite soldier in TV. You stick a mic in someone's face and ask them to say something. It doesn't give you time to reflect or put any of your perspective on thing, and print just allows you to do that. And I think sort of after taking a few years off to take care of my son, decided that I won't go back to television, but really go to print. And there I started writing for magazines, and I really started changing on as a flip to what I was doing in television, which is hard news, to say, hey, let's write stories of positivity and can do and belief, right? And so started writing on that and started veering towards writing on entrepreneurship, which is really, as you know, entrepreneurs is most can do and believe. And I think that couple of years of doing that eventually got me to be the editor of Inc., which we were speaking about in India, which I think this is 2010 to 2014, 15. Startup entrepreneurship was just becoming cool. I think I'm hoping that publications like the one that I was reading made that happen, and I think that has been great fun.
Fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about journalism. Over the years, how has journalism changed?
When I was in college in LSR, you naturally gravitate towards people who, change the world with their words, right?
Correct.
And I think some of us really thought of journalism as being that noble profession, that, that it is an engagement with the world, and that's what helps you sort of that's the pull that you gravitate towards and you find exciting. I think that still exists. I think just because we practice it poorly now, there's so many shifts of, I think, social media and technology and consumption habits of all our consumption habits has naturally changed the art and practice of journalism so very much that right now we all don't, I don't think any of us know really what's going to
Mm.
happen, and what's and how it's going to settle. So I think we're in such an intense period of change,
Mm.
flux, so many factors converging to
Right.
make a mishmash out of journalism. I don't know, it's changed in every way, but we all bemoan the sorry state of affairs that certainly television journalism is in. And I feel like I'm so thankful that every step I have taken away from television journalism over the last 12 years has been a step for, for better for me. So I feel like I feel happy at having caught that it wasn't going to work and it wasn't for
Mm.
me. But I'm not a journalism skeptic at all. I think, of course, we're not seeing a very happy, we're not seeing it at its apex or whatever.
Correct.
But the fact is, I think we will find a balance,
Mm.
and the world needs good journalists.
Mm.
I think, in a way, we can say that it's because of journalism, people writing in a way that information asymmetry has gone down so
Right.
much. It's because information asymmetry and those walls have collapsed that everybody feels they can comment on anything, right? So, and there we're struggling to find the balance, but I think we will. And I genuinely hope that some great journalistic organizations survive, thrive, and continue to sort of be beacons of inspiration, because otherwise we're in a very sorry state of affairs, right?
Mm.
So while I'm as pained as anyone else on what is happening to journalism, I continue to be hopeful that we will find a balance, and this profession must survive.
It has.
It has to. I think there's no other way.
It has to. I agree. It's just that when I'm much older than you, and when I was growing up, there used to be superstar journalists.
Yes, yes.
And the only medium to get our information was through newspapers and magazines. So therefore, we had to form opinions based on what these individuals said and wrote.
Hmm.
Today, with the advent of social media, journalism has been democratized completely.
Yes.
And every one of us can exercise our right to express our opinion, rightly or wrongly.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that's where journalism now needs to come back to some sanity.
Yes, yes. I think meaning making, right? I think journalists, because I don't think journalists can now just give you information, because I think that's so easy for us to get on our own. It's so easy for us to get a variety of opinions on our own as well. I think now great journalists, which is a different from what great journalists did earlier, was to just give you information, because even that was scarce. I think it's this whole thing of being able to make meaning out of everything else that the world is telling you. I think a great journalist will also has to enable you to do that, because you're starting from a position of much higher, at least access to information, or worse, illusion that you have the right information.
Correct. I agree. So, Shreyas, let's talk about your new venture, Harappa. Tell me about this venture.
So, Harappa is an online learning institution where essentially we have put together learning experiences and courses on what we call a cognitive, social, and behavioral skills. And our belief is that these set of these cognitive, social, and behavioral skills are critical to individual professional success, personal growth, as well as to the efficiency and the impact of teams and organizations, right? But are
So, for our
largely
listeners, just
unaddressed.
so
Are largely
for my listeners, just let me understand what are cognitive skills?
So cognitive, social, and behavioral skills is the right academic term we use to describe very simply, and we've broken them down simply into saying 5 habits that you must know.
Okay.
You must be able to think well, so connect the dots, pattern recognition, right? Sift through the lot of the information deluge that we have now. So the one cognitive thing is, how do you think? Do you know how you think, and can you learn how to think better? The second cognitive skill is, how do you solve problems? What is your approach to solving problems? Do you begin from the core of the problem? Do you begin from the solution in mind? Do you begin from the problem with the solution being more popular? So that's the second cognitive skills, of how you solve problems.
Okay.
And then, of course, are the social skills and the behavioral skills, which is, how do you communicate? Both how do you acquire understanding and information through listening and reading, essentially, and then how do you deliver your communication through speaking and writing. Then how do you work with others? How do you collaborate? We've never really been taught how we actually, like humans, work in a certain way with each other. So how do you work with each other and how do you collaborate? And there's a science and art to collaboration
Mm.
that, and then how do you lead yourself? So too long leadership has been considered about sort of one amazing, inspiring leader leading
Mm.
people, and there's a Pied Piper, there's a herd of people following them.
Right.
We're saying that listen, the leadership has to be first. Can you lead yourself? Do you manage yourself? Can you govern yourself? So that's what we really teach at
Okay.
Harappa,
Okay.
are these sort of cognitive social behavior skills of thinking, solving, communicating, collaborating, and leading yourself.
I see. Very interesting. Very interesting. And how are these skills now? Are you measuring the skills? Are you delivering the skills? Are you, I mean, help me understand more.
Sure. We've just created essentially a curriculum framework, which we call the Harappa Habits Framework. And the framework essentially has 25 of these cognitive, social, and behavioral skills: five for think, five for solve, five for communicate, five for collaborate, and five for lead. Each of these skills we have a course around. So essentially at Harappa, we have 25 what's called self-paced asynchronous courses, if I was to use the correct terminology for online learning, for each of these 25 skills. And each of these 25 courses is around 5 to 6 hours long. So you can right now go to, harappa.education, sign up to a course. Say you signed up to the Thinking Critically course, which is under a Think Habit. You don't have to wait for anyone else. You sign up, and in 5 or 6 hours, you get access for a year. And
Mm.
5 or 6 hours, you can go through sort of a learning journey, which is some parts academic theory and frameworks,
Mm.
some faculty videos, and some assessment suite and practice and evaluation questions like you asked, how do you measure it? So
Mm.
that we can help measure your progress on the particular skill.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. So, how do these cognitive skills that we want to be able to say access through harappa.edu, how do these plug into my normal curriculum that I am studying, and what kind of extra pressure is it going to put on me as a student?
So Harappa is it's for adults in the sense that it is for young graduates and
I'm
professionals.
with you.
So we have two sorts of institutions that we approach and acquire learners from there. So we do go to campuses and we go to undergrad engineering and postgraduate MBA, and but a lot of our work is also with corporates, right? And their employee training and engagement initiatives. In, for example, if I was to take the example of several engineering colleges, like I think that one can't always, you can't generalize, but most engineering, or at least several engineering colleges, the fact is some of these foundational core skills are only skimmed upon in the curriculum,
Mm.
right? Like the 80% or 85% of the engineering curriculum is hardcore engineering curriculum, not leaving any space for what we think these are important skills that people will use, right? So in that sense, it folds in actually very, very nicely because it balances out your learning. You're learning content and theories, and then these are skills. So that combination is great for a student. And the institutions we work with certainly are realizing that. And in campuses, at least the campuses we work with, try and calendar it into the academic calendar already to say in this semester people can do 4 Harappa courses. So they make time for that naturally in the calendar. So a learner is not overburdened, already burdened, and then on top of this they have to take it, right? I think in corporates and with professionals already in the workplace, I think the lack of not having some of these skills, for example, we teach negotiation, we teach speaking effectively, building presence. I think professionals feel the pain of it. People have been overlooked if they've not been able to communicate in a certain way. Some people struggle with taking the right decisions. All of those, which are sort of the curriculum that we focus on,
Mm.
there people do make time for sort of on-the-job learning or skills that will help them for whatever it is that they're managing. The great advantage of online learning, especially when it's self-paced and asynchronous, which is what our courses are, you have a lot of learner has a lot of autonomy, right, and convenience to do it. So you want to do, some people like, and we can see that through the learner behavior, learner analytics. But when people are learning, some people we see, like you see a spike during lunch hour, right? So you know that somebody is using the time to have lunch and the Harappa course is on. You see a big spike for some people post dinner,
Hmm.
you see early morning, right? So that's the advantage, that people can fit it into their schedule. When before COVID, we would see it during commute time, right? Like suddenly at 8:45 to 9:30, you saw people. One correlated to say they must be
Hmm.
in the metro, or
Hmm.
in an Uber or an Ola, and that's what they were doing. So I think that convenience and autonomy of taking away the live appointment viewing, I
Hmm.
think really it helps learners not overburden themselves and fit it according to their convenience in their schedule.
Wonderful. And it's very encouraging to hear from you that a lot of young people are actually wanting to invest in themselves during their free time.
Oh, absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
that's quite incredible. And yet, education as a subject has been very, very highly regulated in our country.
Hmm.
How does this impact Harappa?
I think we're fortunate to be, I think they're enabling regulatory tailwinds for us at
Hmm.
this moment. I think they were already going in that direction, and everything that we've lived through, thanks to the pandemic, has only accelerated that progress, right? I think there is I think in the government, and I think with sort of most regulators, as well as any university academic administrators or experts, realize it's just the burden of what India needs to do on upping itself on education, whether it's a gross enrollment ratio, whether it's through skilling,
So,
through upskilling. You know that we cannot build the number of classrooms, get that in that number of teachers, and do everything in the physical offline. I don't think actually India has, that is not a solution that is truly actually available to us. And
correct.
I think we will have to use technology in a pretty significant manner
Hmm.
for what we need to get done. I think that understanding is there in a lot of people, and I'm not at all anti offline or whatever. I mean, I
Hmm.
don't believe in these binaries, right? But to say that, please let all of the niche offline institutions of pedigree, they all must survive and thrive also, and we should create new ones.
Hmm.
I think where is the problem? We are not in a position where we can say either or.
Correct.
Any educationist being online first, online only, offline first, offline only, with the right intention. There's so much for all of us to do in this country on education, that let all models succeed and scale, and technology enabled ones even more so have to. So I think hopefully the focus on regulation being enabling
Hmm.
is what we are seeing, at least for online.
Absolutely. So, one more question on education before I move to some personal questions.
Sure.
Given the pandemic and given all the changes that are taking place, is online education here to stay much more aggressively and in a much larger format than it used to be?
Oh, for sure. I think so. And, there are two or three things that I say often now. We have to understand that what many of us, we're all sort of, we are seeing a huge mass of first generation online learners, right? Because thanks to the pandemic, in 6 months, most of us have become first generation online learners. I think we must understand sort of that we're at the beginning of the civilization, to use the Harappa, whatever.
Yeah.
The new landscape and the frontier of online learning, we're at the ground floor of it. This is not what it's going to be. So, to those people who've been disenchanted, disillusioned,
Mhm.
underwhelmed by that online learning experience, please understand that your universities and colleges did it overnight, right? This is not what it's going to be, and we will see rapid improvements on the online learning experience because the adoption problem has been sorted, right? So I think we will see many learners. So that's one. So please keep the faith that there will be an evolution. We all started without being prepared. Faculty wasn't prepared, and we've done it. So you will see rapid improvement. Second, I think there will be a subsection of learners for sure who will enjoy the accessibility, affordability, convenience, autonomy, especially for lifelong and professional learning. I mean,
Right.
that I've had such a sort of a serendipitous journey into
Yeah.
entrepreneurship. I've had to learn so much.
Correct.
There's no way, as being a working mother, having a full house, whatever, that I can leave everything, say, hey, listen, I'm going to go and do a 2 year entrepreneurship boot camp before I start a company. We all have to learn skills. At how can you do that? Online is the only way almost
True.
for people like us. I think schools and colleges, after whenever this is over, will go back to most semblance of normalcy, I think.
Hmm.
But I think in large parts of professional learning, corporate learning, adult learning, I think many segments of that is not going to come back to the classroom. It will just not make sense. So I think everyone have to sort of, I tell everyone you have to learn how to learn online. For yourself, you should do that.
And yet, when I look back 40, 45 years when I was in college, there was always this thing called correspondence courses.
Yes, exactly. Distance
And
courses and correspondence
those are
courses.
courses which somehow or the other, if you didn't want to get into anything else, and don't want to demean or disrespect anybody, but if you didn't get into anything else in Delhi University, you did a correspondence course. That
Hmm.
seems to have come a long way with
Hmm.
all the technology to online education.
Absolutely. And I think this is why you were asking about regulation. The fact is, in a way, a light touch regulation on online means that the curriculum can be contemporized, modernized, and new kinds of curriculum will be available much more easily online than it can be in your established institutions, because they will have to go through the hoops,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
And the kind of skills that you want to learn, you will not be able to find in a lot of colleges. I mean, the online internet has been amazing for that, right? It's mainstream the niche.
Yeah,
So, you love, I don't know, cross stitching. You will find like a vibrant community of cross stitchers online, which you will never find if you were living in any
absolutely.
town, right? So you will, just the variety of things that you want to learn on, also hobby learning,
Right.
passion learning, guitar. I mean, I don't, so many things that one can do. So it's not about substitution of your bachelor's degree,
Hmm.
is not the only way to think about
Correct.
online learning. I
Yeah,
think it's a much, it can offer a much wider, richer
absolutely.
tapestry of options.
Very true. So I've got time for a few questions for you personally.
Sure.
My first question is, Shresi, where do you draw your inspiration from?
Huh. A little bit from, I think, my parents' expectations of me. But I don't know if that's inspiration, also sense of responsibility. I come from Bihar, and certainly my father is very community minded. And after he retired, he started or whatever. So I think this thing about doing something that is beyond your own success, and does something to the world around you. I think that's a strong inspiration,
Okay.
that I feel like, I mean, I want to be successful, wealthy, all of that, right? I want to own that ambition, but hopefully that my success also leads to the success of others is, I think, a strong inspiration for me. I think second, I think creators, whether they create books or entrepreneurs, I think people who create something out of nothing certainly inspire me. I think I definitely want to do that. And I keep saying I'm sort of a non-techie, non-MBA woman founder of a digital business. I think ambitious women, and the envelope that they have pushed in the past inspire me as well.
Very well said. Very well said. So my next question to you is that if you were a role model to millions of children who closely followed your life choices, what is the one thing you would change in yourself?
Ah, ouch, that's tough. I think in the earlier part of my life, for sure, I think more in my 20s than now, I'd have the patience to see things through. I think doing anything meaningful takes longer than we ever imagined it to take. So I think perseverance and patience is something that I would change, definitely. And second, I'd ask for more help. I think don't take on the burden of being successful on your own. Ask for help from anyone you admire or whatever
Hmm.
who you think can help you.
Hmm.
Be fearless in asking for help.
Terrific. And my last question to you relates to the pandemic. How are you rethinking your life in the new world order?
Wow. Well, one, I have a terrace which was sort of not being used. So I've built myself an office there. So I think that's a tactical way in how I'm thinking differently, because then it's a nice office work divide that one can create. I think change is a very important, embracing change and reading future trends and whatever is important. I want to be on the right side of history, right? And the right side of change.
Hmm.
So I do think of a lot about, especially now as a business owner, and there are 80, 90 people people in Harappa, you're making choices for other people as well, right? What is the right way to work? Like, I'm not taking anything for granted that, what I believed in. So in a way, it's confusing, but I think sort of resketch almost every notion on productivity, collaboration, teamwork, creativity. I think there's a lot of that. I'm also a parent, I have a 14-year-old son. And I realized that actually more than the content, whatever of school, I'm very focused on, in his case, only about social interaction and sports, right? Like physical activity. So I think I definitely want to engineer my life to say beyond work and reading and consumption of information and media, how to ensure that the pandemic doesn't stop me from physical activity and social activity. And I think a lot about that.
Wonderful. Shreyasi, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you, and I wish Harappa lots of success.
Thank you so much. And thank you again for having me on the show. It's a great show. I watched so many episodes.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.